Okay, so we're talking about the Battle of Bull Run. So you're supposed to be reading the handout called Setting the Stage to give you some background information. This is on the eastern shore. So one thing that's really important to understand is that the Civil War is fought all over the United States, and it's fought pretty rapidly. So we're going to be balancing between the eastern side of the United States and then going back to Missouri. So just a little bit of refresher information from the handout that you should have read called Setting the Stage. By midsummer of 1861, little action had been taking place except for skirmishes like Camp Jackson. But there hadn't been like a major battle. Even Camp Jackson is not a major battle. It was just kind of like a riot. That was a really big deal to St. Louis and not really a big deal to the rest of the nation. So in July, Confederate government decided to move its capital from Montgomery, Alabama to Richmond, Virginia. The Confederate Congress was scheduled to meet in Richmond on July 20th. With Richmond little more than 100 miles from Washington, D.C., northern newspapers called for immediate action. About 30 miles from Washington was the small town of Manassas, Virginia. Manassas was an important railroad junction from which the North could launch an attack in the direction of Richmond. It was also an ideal jumping-off place for a Confederate attack on Washington, if the South were so inclined. So here on July 21st, 1861, at a small stream called Bull Run, the first major battle of the Civil War was fought. So our date is July 1, 1861. So people just were not that really concerned. Thousands of people made hasty plans to ride out to watch the Southern troops. Not all were ordinary citizens. At least 6 senators and an undetermined number of congressmen were among them. They left Washington on horseback in various types of carriages. With them were pretty ladies in fancy gowns and even fancier hats. And as previously mentioned, they took their picnic baskets with them. No one in their wildest dreams could imagine that anything would go wrong at Manassas. All did go well for the Northerners at first. The 35,000 Union troops under General Irvin McDowell almost put the Confederates to flight. Although McDowell's soldiers were mostly inexperienced, they fought admirably against the equally inexperienced Southern troops. Their performance in battle prompted General McDowell to wire General Scott that victory could be expected. But matters quickly changed in the afternoon. 10,000 additional Southern troops arrived at Manassas by railroad and joined the battle. Their appearance turned the tide in favor of the South. Their blood-curdling rebel yell so frightened the green Northern troops that the latter turned and ran. What started as a retreat soon turned into a panic-stricken rout. The boys in blue threw away their guns and other equipment and dashed off to safety in the direction of Washington. Many bystanders witnessed the wild retreat of the nation's capital. Some were reporters, others congressmen or citizens from the city. Many tried to prevent the Union soldiers from running away. Several congressmen grabbed discarded rifles and threatened to shoot anyone who did not stop. They shouted at retreating soldiers and called them cowards, but nothing could slow down the frantic mass of soldiers fleeing along the roads and through the woods. And as for miles along the route to Washington, the roadway was littered with hats, blankets, coats, guns, canteens, provisions. Horrifying scenes greeted all who fled around the escape route. Bleeding horses still attached to carts and guns gnawed at the sides in agony as they lay dying in ditches. Wounded men lay by the side of the road, pleading not to be left behind. One officer was seen riding his charging horse over the body of a man with no legs who had crawled into the center of the road. Crazed horses pulling artillery pieces trampled over others. Even the picnickers joined in the flight to Washington. Before the battle began, they had spread their picnic blankets on the ground on a hill overlooking Bull Run Creek to watch the day's events. When the frenzied rout began, they left their fine foods and wines to the ants and the victorious rebels, and beat a hasty retreat back to the capital. Their presence clogged the roads and added even more to the chaos in the Union retreat. A drizzling rain fell on Washington the Monday after the Bull Run disaster. All that day, dazed Union soldiers crossed the Potomac River into the city. They had no idea what to do or where to go. They did not even know where the Army headquarters were. They were tired, hungry, and completely confused. Kind-hearted ladies of Washington cooked soups and stews and served the men from large wash boilers. Afterward, what remained of a once confident army fell asleep on lawns, porches, and sidewalks. You may wonder why the victorious Southern troops did not pursue the fleeing army. The answer is that they were shocked into inactivity. Nobody was prepared for what they saw in the aftermath of the battle. Bodies were everywhere. Many had no arms or legs, and some had no heads. Terrible new weapons, used for the first time in warfare, had created a scene of horror. Surviving soldiers could only stare in disbelief at what they saw. As a result, few were inclined to chase after a defeated army. The First Battle of Bull Run brought home several realities of war to both the North and the South. First, the battle showed that the war was no game or picnic. People actually got killed. The Union forces counted 460 dead, more than 1,100 wounded, and more than 1,300 missing. Confederate losses were put at 378 killed, only almost 1,500 wounded, and 30 missing. Second, Bull Run proved that the war would not end quickly. Instead of being over in a day as the North had expected, it would drag on for 4 years. Okay, so that should be another slide. Legacies. War is not a picnic. Not going to be over short. No more ideas of glory and victory, but of gruesome scenes and hardship. Okay, so that's the significance of Bull Run.